And this has got to be my favorite story of the entire week. WWE filed a motion in court this week that they anticipate joining Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis in asking that the Janelle Grant sex trafficking lawsuit against them be settled in arbitration and not in front of a jury. But that is not the only lawsuit that WWE is facing. They filed a response on May 3rd, so I missed this last week, but they filed a response in court. They asked the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Youngstown, Ohio, to dismiss a bizarre lawsuit against them in which the defendant, an independent wrestler named Anthony Dwayne Wilson, age 37, who alleges that the promotion plagiarized his ideas and is seeking damages from both WWE and AEW in the amount of $250 million. Wilson alleges that WWE has repeatedly stolen his ideas without being paid for his work, though he did not give any specific examples of ideas that were used by WWE. Wilson also alleges that he and the Bullet Club had plans to start a wrestling promotion known today as AEW. It is claimed that the wrestling faction stole plans that Wilson devised in order to create the promotion. So he is claiming that they violated copyright laws by supposedly using his creative gimmicks and his names and slogan and likeness without his permission. Now, in his original filing, so I should mention this was first filed in November of last year, but it was dismissed. It was dismissed without prejudice, which meant he could refile the suit later, which he did. In that original filing, he said, "This has cost me work outside and inside professional wrestling. These actions have led to loss of fans and income." He had fans. "Some of these infringements were intentional to harm my reputation and career, aiming to embarrass me or waste my time. As a writer and professional wrestler, my creative works are my livelihood." Oh, I think you've been embarrassed, all right. Not by WWE, though. Or AEW. But it gets even better. Because last month, Wilson asked a federal judge to pause his case against the two companies while he sits in jail for throwing urine on a corrections officer. So let's take a pause here for a second, okay? I'm not even sure why he's currently in jail. I fished around trying to find an explanation for why he was in jail in the first place. But according to the county prosecutor's office, there was an incident in January of 2023 where a corrections officer was splashed with urine that Wilson had thrown from a milk carton through an opening in the discipline pod of the jail. But it makes no mention of why he was there in the first place. So he threw urine on the guy and is currently incarcerated. Now, WWE's filing does not make reference to him currently being incarcerated, and also ignores his demand for the return of, quote, all ships and plunder. Why do I picture this guy with a hook for a hand and a parrot on his shoulder? The fuck does that even mean? Should he somehow win this case, and spoiler, he won't, but if he was to win, I guess stranger things have happened. Not only is he seeking $250 million in damages, he is seeking full control of AEW. He wants a seat on the WWE board of directors and stock options within the company. And he also plans to integrate AEW and its roster into the WWE umbrella. And here I thought that Raka Khan lawsuit last year was the craziest thing that I ever heard. That was the one where she sued, among others, the FBI, the state of Texas, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Jim Cornette, Chris Benoit, who's been dead for over 15 years, Bank of America, and Home Depot for conspiring to kidnap her children. Actually, you know what? That still is the craziest thing I've ever heard. But this isn't too far behind. You know, if he wins the case and merges the rosters, does that mean CM Punk and Jack Perry and the Young Bucks would all have to share a locker room again? Oh boy, Drew McIntyre's going to have a field day with this. As he continues to deal with the after effects of the stroke that he suffered in February of last year, Jerry the King Lawler this week said that his WWE career is most likely over after WWE opted not to renew his broadcasting contract. WWE has also since removed his profile from the roster page. They have shifted him over to the Hall of Fame section. In an interview this week, Lawler said, "It's just one of those things that goes with my getting over all the stuff that happened with the stroke, and it was just my sitting behind a desk and commentating on a match again was extremely difficult." I can't even remember the last time Lawler did actual commentary on a match in WWE. Actually, it might have been the episode of Raw where he guest commentated for, I think, one match. I think it was for a Gunther match, and he called him Gunther, which is where the Gunther super chat comes from on my YouTube streams. Call the fucking guy Gunther. You could tell he never saw him a day in his life. But they were primarily using Lawler for the kickoff show panels, and it was very clear for a while that he was mentally checked out and did not actually follow the product anymore. He just showed up, they paid him, he said, a bunch of shit, and he went home. Very clear that was going on for quite a while. But it makes sense to me. I'm glad that he's still on the mend and doing well and better after the stroke. His voice still very weak. He doesn't sound like he's in a position to be back on television doing commentary or analysis yet. He may not be for a while. So there was no need for him to be under a broadcasting contract if he is not broadcasting. He is still under a Legends deal, which means the company can sell his merch. They can include him in the video games. So he still has a source of income from the company. He's just not an active employee for them anymore. This is a man who's been 30 years working for WWE, more or less, right around 30 years. That's a hell of a run. They debuted him on Primetime Wrestling. It was December of 1992, and what a huge surprise that was, considering the comments that he had made about Vince McMahon and the company prior to that, right? The King of Memphis, the big babyface. He was always making comments about WWF. He even sued Vince McMahon back in the 80s. Vince made Harley Race the king of wrestling, and they decided to run an event in Tennessee, which was Lawler country. And Lawler was the king of wrestling down in Memphis. So he sued for trademark infringement, and he actually won. He's one of the few people who actually beat Vince McMahon in court, Jesse Ventura being the other. And WWE was not allowed to use the king of wrestling name for anyone in the state of Tennessee. So when he showed up on USA Network, that took a lot of people by surprise. And there was a period of a few months at the end of 93 into the beginning of 94 where Lawler was taken off TV after he got indicted on rape and sodomy charges of a 15-year-old girl. And after the victim later recanted her story, Lawler was brought back instantly. He was back on TV at WrestleMania 10. And then he was there all the way through the beginning of 2001 when they fired his wife, the cat, Stacey Carter. He walked out with her. Then, of course, what happened? She left him. And he was back before the end of the year. So he wasn't gone for very long. I mean, he was gone for the majority of 2001, but he came back the night after Survivor Series that year. Although the one WrestleMania that he missed during that whole long period that he was there before he walked out, the one Mania he missed just so happened to be the greatest WrestleMania of all time. And I don't think he was gone for any length of time really again until he had the heart attack on Raw back in 2012. And he missed a few months after that. But again, look, he had a hell of a run there. He is still technically under a contract with the company, but if he's not doing broadcasting and it doesn't look like he's really in a position to do so, I don't see how this is a big story. It makes sense, that they would let his contract run out.